On episode 17, we head to Frisco, Colorado for a conversation with Todd Altschuler of 10 Mile Music Hall, and we feature a couple of songs from Mike Dillon's newest release, Rosewood. But first, a reading from Jay's 2016 Yarmany Grass story.
I awoke no worse for wear and switched on my radio to an enthusiastic response and some German chatter. Coffee and breakfast burritos would realign my meat chakras as a couple of the weekend's headliners, Roosevelt Collier and Andy Hall, wandered into our camp for some coffee and hilarious banter. I presented Rosie with a sticker of himself playing Frisbee at Yarmany 2014 as my folks and some other great friends came too. The majority of the day for the staff was spent in the river, which was frigid cold from the water being released in one of the high-up alpine lakes. With my floating slice of pizza inflated, I made my first attempt at the river before circling back for a bottle of Milagro that my parents brought. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to get me in the water on what was a bit of an overcast morning. Early in the afternoon, I made the trip up to the box office to greet Jeff Austin, who was clearly excited and all smiles. I had a great conversation with Jeff before heading backstage for the smoked brisket, alongside 2 beer can chickens. But first, Michigan Coney dogs were up, with National Coney Island chili and fried on-site French fries. Folks gathered and a line took shape for a true Midwest meal. The evening's headliner, the Jeff Austin Band, hit the stage around midnight. What followed was fantastic as Jeff dove into old material with banjo player Ryan Kavanaugh assaulting the audience with some of the best banjo playing that I had heard recently. I looked over to my left and Roosevelt had his phone out, recording with a big smile on his face. Roosevelt was called to the stage shortly to follow with some blissful output. The main stage came to a close for the day as the saloon stage came back to life once more with one of the weekend's hosts, the Drunken Hearts. Up on the deck, we danced, drank, and solved the world's problems. To my right was Roosevelt, to my left Andy Hall. My wife and my friends were all around us, and in that moment, nothing else mattered but the present. Both of the aforementioned slide gurus sat in with the Hearts, and the set, in the end, was one of my clear highlights of the weekend. Upon its conclusion, we made our way back into the camps and held a board meeting of epic proportions. All was right with the world. I'm here with my friend Todd, who owns 10 Mile Music Hall up in Frisco, Colorado. How are you, Todd?
I'm doing great today.
Awesome. How's the weather up there?
We had snow yesterday on Memorial Day weekend, but today the sun is shining.
Excellent. Tell folks a little bit about 10 Mile Music Hall. When I met you, you owned a place called
Barclay Ballroom.
Barclay Ballroom, which was a really, really fun place to play. We did a bunch of cool super jams there. Recently, you moved from operating there, and now you opened 10 Mile Music Hall. So, yeah, tell folks about 10 Mile.
Well, we're in Frisco, Colorado, where we're, a town of about 2,500 people, but we're, 10 minutes from Breckenridge, 10 minutes from Copper, and 20 minutes from Vail and Keystone and A Basin and Loveland. So we do we have a lot more people than 2,500 in our town on any given weekend. And the 10 Mile Music Hall was actually conceived from Barclay Ballroom because we were having so much fun doing these amazing ticketed bigger shows and underplays, but the room wasn't really good. It was a bar and a lounge. It wasn't really a music venue. The ceilings were low. There was no green room. There was no private bathroom for the musicians, and we got lucky and were able to build from scratch a new venue that holds 650 people right here in the mountains, and that's 10 Mile Music Hall. Opened in October of 2018 with a couple sold out leftover salmon shows.
Wow. I've always been so jealous of you operating up there because I think of all the competition and all the buying I have to, when I do that down in the city, it's a very different than when people have to route through your region. So I've always been really jealous of the fact that you kind of got your own little space up there. Did you guys design the venue from scratch?
We did. Yep. We worked with an architect and got to put in as much awesome stuff as we could in the envelope that we had. It's not the biggest footprint, but we really went and put in as much stuff as we could. As far as building a new venue, you want sight lines and big stage and good lights, good sound, all that stuff. So we were able to do that.
When the doors actually opened and you saw the performances taking place for the first time, did you feel like your vision came to life? And was it pretty similar to the approach you guys took? And how do you feel about that result?
It's awesome. Yes, the answer is yes. The bands that we wanted to bring all have come and love playing there. So, to be able to do that and give that to the people who, work their butts off in the restaurants and the ski industry up here, and to be able to give them the ability to see the music that they used to only be able to go down to Denver to see up here in the mountains has been great.
Yeah, you're doing a really cool thing up there. The mountains has gotten some really cool music in the past few years and in some really intimate spaces, and a lot of that is definitely due to what you're doing. What have been some of your favorite shows that you've had at 10 Mile thus far?
Oh, gosh. I mean, the Dusters seem to, really, really play well there. Some of the others, Spafford, Pigeons Playing Ping Pong, have played some really, really great shows there. And one of my favorites was the New Year's Melvin Seals and JGB show because, I love Melvin Seals and JGB.
Yeah, that's such a sweet sounding project. I've always really dug that. Did you see that Spafford played at a drive-in theater for ticketed audience?
I think that's amazing. I wish I lived in Arizona. We're not currently under restrictions really supposed to travel outside of our county. So going to Arizona would have been hard, but those guys, they're one of those bands that played Barkley on their first tour ever outside of Arizona. And I think we had a free show with about 25 people. And recently they've been selling out 2 nights at 10 Mile. So they're a band that we've grown together, which is really cool.
That's great. On that same run, when they first came out here, I was booking at the One Up, and I want to say we got them for like $400 on a Thursday or something.
I think I beat you. I think we only paid $300.
But we ended up paying them a bunch more because they packed the place out on a Thursday. There was like 500 people there maybe. So we were like, hey, come back. Here's a little bit more money.
I wish we got to pay them more. We just paid them their guarantee and then sat around, chatting about music and life and everything with all 4 of them, till probably 4:30 in the morning. And that doesn't happen anymore at 10 Mile. That was a Barkley thing. It was, like I said, it was kind of more of a bar, and we got to do that with the musicians. And so, I really got to know them, from their infancy. But yeah, that drive up concert thing that's awesome.
It was really well executed. And as a promoter, I'm watching that very intently and thinking, my mind is just racing. It's like all the possibilities. And they really did a great job, and it was a fantastic show too. And the live broadcast element too, is just a really cool thing. I'm curious as to how many fans they reached. Can you tell me a little bit about towards the end of when you were holding concerts up there? Did you have to cancel a bunch of concerts going into this COVID thing?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, we had Paul Hoffman, Anders Beck, and Billy Strings scheduled on Thursday, March 12th. And, that's when everything was going down. The Disney World was closing. The NBA and NCAA were canceling. That was like that day. And just, every second was just do. And they actually were able to drive all the way up here. And by the end of the day, it was like they didn't feel comfortable going on stage. I was still kind of like, before all that, I was still kind of like, what do you mean? We only have 1 case up here. I think we're going to be okay. And everyone who has tickets seems to want to do one last fun time before the world gets shut down. And, they made the smart decision. Honestly, I was just thinking, man, how cool would it be to have those guys and those three guys on our stage, and probably was clouded. But, since then I've certainly, by the next day I was knowing it was the right decision and, sheltering in place myself with my family and hoping that no one got sick that I knew. I ended up knowing, a lot of people that, have been sick and currently are, and people that have been, intubated and in hospitals and just horrible stuff. It's just, I think while the music world is, knocked down on the canvas and maybe the ref hasn't counted to 10 yet, but, we're all in bad shape right now. And it's still the right thing for, 100,000 people to have already died of this, even with the shutdowns in place. I mean, I can't even imagine what that would look like if they didn't, if people weren't looking out for our best interest and shutting things down.
Yeah, we had to cancel that Roosevelt Collier show up there. You were really awesome about handling all that and just a super professional. And, when I think back on how bad it could have been, and you hear a lot of the conservative folks saying, well, look, it was only this many people. We shouldn't have shut down. And it's like there's this misunderstanding that if we didn't shut down, and maybe it isn't a conservative liberal thing, but there's a lot of people that are suggesting that we didn't need to shut down because of our low death toll. And there's not an acknowledgement that it would have been much worse had we not shut down.
I mean, that who knows what it would have looked like. I'm sure it would be way, way, way worse. But, I say to those people, I read somewhere that basically, we have the equivalent of 5 full airplanes a day crashing, killing everyone. And we're almost immune to it because it's not something of that nature. But if that happened, we'd be grounding airplanes. You wouldn't be able to fly if every day 5 planes were crashing.
I mean, do you remember how big of a deal, obviously, 9/11 was at the time and that loss of life? And we're doing that now every single day plus, I believe. It's really...
it's crazy, yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
What have you guys done up there to keep some sort of musical spirit alive? Are you guys... I know you sent me a text recently with the information about the curbside thing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so with, live music really shut down for the foreseeable future, and maybe it's changing in some areas, I don't know, but up here, we're going to be, even the places that you could go see your local musician are trying to get people in, turn them over. They don't want people, sitting around being sick possibly. So, there's a big contingent of people who obviously miss live music. And then there's on the other side, a whole bunch of musicians, especially those solo people who play bars and breweries and all that kind of stuff. And those people need to get back to work and fans need to be able to see those people. So we launched Curbside Concerts, which has been doing great here locally. And we're about to start, rolling it out nationally. With musicians from all over the country. But basically, if you want to hire a musician to come play a concert at your home, you just go to our website and you can type in your area. It comes up with a bunch of musicians, hopefully, that are playing in your neighborhood or that will travel to your neighborhood. And then you can go on and book. And there's, the lowest level of musicians is $100 for an hour. The next rung up is $200, and then there's a possibility we're going to have people who you've heard of, people that are in bands that you know and like, that will be more expensive, and you can book them to come play your house. And what we're doing is we're having the people who book run an extension cord from their home to the end of their driveway or to a safe curbside area. The musician rolls up, they've got their speaker and their mixer in the back of their vehicle, whether it be a trunk or a hatch or a cargo area or whatever. They open the hatch, they pull out their stool and their instrument and their mic stand that's already hooked up. And within 5 minutes, they're plugged into the post power source and playing a concert for these people. We've done about 50 of them up here in Summit County, and people are just loving it. You know, not everyone wants to go out right now, even though you're, you know, maybe allowed. Like, it's bad. You know, we've had more hospitalizations up here in the past week than, you know, we've had in a couple of weeks combined, because so many more people are going out and relaxing their social distancing and stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be weird after Memorial Day weekend. I really love that concept. Is this something that you came up with, or are just partnered with, or whose concept is this?
It's basically, I was working with the town of Frisco on ways to safely reopen, do some fun things with being socially responsible. And one of the things that popped into my head about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago was we should do a town-wide Memorial Day driveway picnics, basically. And everyone, and the town ended up not being able to get this together, but everyone throws a picnic in their own driveway, and you go out there and your neighbors are, having a picnic and you're having a picnic, and the town goes around and gives prizes for best decorations and all this stuff. And I, off of that thought was, and it would be really cool if musicians were driving around playing music. And my thought was, well, that's an awesome idea.
It is.
So how do I make that work? And me and my wife, Maura, were, sitting around when this idea came up, and she was like, yeah, we could help save local musicians one driveway at a time. And I just laughed, and I was like, how amazing is that? Like, not only could we hear live music, but these musicians could, reclaim their lost income. And we just got to work on it and started just penciling down what it could look like. And we got a very rudimentary system up for, our local area, and then have had people build a real quality system that could work nationwide. And we should be rolling that out early this week.
When you do, I'd like to share it over to Music Marauders and on my personal page and help however I can, because I really love the idea. I think that's really amazing.
Yeah, well, it's anyone who wants to be safe and responsible. There's a thing that, people who are hosting these shows have to check the box that says, I, will adhere to all gathering bans and social distancing and physical distancing guidelines in my area. And, the big thing about that is that we have it in there as the musician. If they don't feel like it's a socially responsible thing, then they can leave and not provide a refund. And that's the biggest thing, is this is really to be out there to be safe, because someday, who knows when, musicians will return to the stage, but until then we'll have curbside concerts.
I really appreciate that it's discretionary for the musician, because no one wants to be playing when there's a big crowd gathering and no one's following the rules and have their face on that.
Yep.
Sounds sketchy.
Yeah, it is. And we're not sending out bands, we have this, something for the musicians that if they want to play in more than a solo act, they should be either reside in the same household, or they should be in the same, physically distant pod, not just people coming together.
Yeah, right.
That who knows from where, because that could lead to an outbreak too. And that's exactly the thing we're trying to prevent.
What'll be really helpful is when testing becomes way more widespread, and when you can maybe even take instant tests at home, so that you're able to know who, at least at the time, outside of the possible residual coronavirus not registering on a test, you've really limited a lot of exposure and a lot of risk. If everybody's going in tested, then you can also almost have a situation like the good old days.
Wouldn't that be nice? And I'd love, as soon as we're allowed, we're going to have, on the patio at 10 Mile, we'll totally have the local musicians play up there. And we're probably only on a place where we're normally allowed to have, 64 people. We're probably only going to be able to have 15 to 20. And, that's tough, because it's part of our summer business. But, with 10 Mile, the weddings have all canceled for the summer. That's a big part of our summer programming. We don't do a lot of the big indoor concerts because of how many free concert series there are around the mountains, with Vail and Dillon Amphitheater and all that stuff. And there's places to go see awesome, huge bands for free every night of the week if you wanted to. So, we don't do a big ticketed, hard ticket concert business in the summer. And, that's tough for everyone. So, but we can certainly put local musicians on the deck and hope for the best there.
The whole financial model shifts at that point. I can't even imagine what that looks like as in regards to trying to make it make sense financially. But I know that also there's an investment in putting on music at a time where there may not be too for the future.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for you thinking progressively about all this. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Seriously, it's impressive, because I've seen so many people out there, and I would expect nothing less of you, obviously. But I've seen so many promoters out there, honestly, that are just completely reckless. There are venues that are opening up on the East Coast, And I saw one of my friends posting, hey, who wants to jump in the car with us and go to this show? And somebody commented on the post and said, do we have to wear masks and social distance? And I'm hoping for him to swing back in with this answer that says yes, and we're going to follow all the rules. Instead, the answer said, just outside in line when you're in public. And once you get inside, there's no social distancing or masks because it's private property.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be, there's a handful of people that will break any rule. And, whether it be the speed limit or.
There's no fucking statement to be made here. This is not a stand. This is not a constitutional issue. This is us trying to make sure everybody feels better. So, but I expect there's got to be some return to normalcy in the next year or two, right? And I just hope that all of these venues, independent venues, can hold out for that. Are you seeing independent venues getting any assistance or funding from any sort of grants or programs, or are you guys just kind of sitting ducks now?
I mean, I know, this NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, is lobbying hard on the behalf. But, I don't know that everyone's lobbying for money, from the federal government. So hopefully, I mean, they seem to have their stuff together, and they're really, really well organized. And they're doing a really good job of getting us as the venue, the information to disseminate it to our people, whether it be the politicians or our email list and all that kind of stuff. So, they're working hard, but I don't know what it's going to look like. And, the thing is that no one knows when they're going to have concerts again, and no venue can survive on 30% capacity or 50% capacity. It's just not a model that's built for that. So, it's going to be really, really tough. And I don't know how that's all going to go. I wish to say that everything's just going to be fine, but I don't know.
How you doing personally?
My whole family's healthy, and, we don't see a lot of people. I have a 3-year-old who keeps asking when the germs are going to go away. Just she's doing the best she can with it, and we're doing the best we can with her. But, it's like I said at the beginning, it's, you feel like you've been knocked down on the canvas, and no one has any information for you. No one has any information as to what's going to happen, or even if they say you could do this in a month, is it going to turn back around? And so it's just, one of those things that you just do your best to say, okay, well, what might next winter look like? But even that's, no one knows what it's going to look like. So it's tough.
That's been the biggest disappointment for me, is just watching the lack of any sort of response, any sort of plan, any sort of loose guidelines within any sort of helpful time frame. You want to have some sort of flow of information that's going to be helpful and give us some sort of guidance. And it just seems to be that is not happening.
It's not.
It's sketch. Let's go into something a little bit more positive. Tell me about some of your favorite venues and favorite places in this country to see music.
Yeah, so lived in Telluride for a while and just absolutely love Sheridan Opera House. In San Francisco, I would say Great American Music Hall is probably, way tops on that list. I'm a much more intimate venue person. While I love, Bobby and, anyone from the Grateful Dead's doing, I don't like to sit in a stadium and see a show. It's just not my ideal thing. Even those amphitheaters are just not my scene. A small one, a 2,000, 3,000 person one like we have here, the Dillon Amphitheater, is one of my favorite places to, see a show outdoors in the summer. But I am way, way more of a, intimate venue guy.
Yeah, me too. I really love, for that reason, I love jazz rooms, and I love a lot of the smaller super jams that are put together because it lends itself to kind of a smaller crowd. Yeah. Which is probably why you and I have worked together on a lot of that kind of stuff,
Definitely.
I've enjoyed that. If you could put together just an open slate of all musicians who are currently alive, your super jam, what might that look like, Todd?
Wow. If I could put together a super jam of everyone that's alive.
Money and availability is no issue.
Gosh, that is not a question I have ever been asked, and it's tough because I think that, while Wow.
Here, let's do this. Like when I think of these things, I go like instrument by instrument. Like who would you have on like guitar? Who are your favorite guitarists?
Yeah, I mean, I could go anywhere from Eric Clapton to our friend Robbie and Jr. And bringing it back to Spafford, like I think Brian to me is one of my favorite guitarists out there because honestly, like I like someone who plays and doesn't go fast just to hear audience reaction. Or maybe they do it for another reason, but to me, it's like to bring the crowd to that thing. And I can really get off on, obviously, I've brought it up a couple times. I'm pretty, pretty big into the guitar work of, say, Jerry Garcia. So, anyone who just plays and they let their music bring you to the place that it needs to go, but as far as,
I love that you mentioned Junior. Junior's such a great player. He's so tasteful, and that dude just rips.
I don't know how many people listen to your podcast, but I will say that everyone deserves to know who Robbie and Junior is. They know who Robbie and Senior is, a lot of them who may listen, but they don't know who Junior is. And Junior's just got his own thing going on, and man, he's so
absolutely
good.
I love him. Good dude, too.
As far as different kinds of bass players and
what do you got on bass?
And I mean, just on keys, like I could sit and Bruce Hornsby's my favorite, but I can sit and listen to here in Colorado Bill McKay all day long and get the same thing out of it.
Another great guy.
So it would be really, really hard in how they play together. But anyway,
name me a couple bass players. Who do you got on bass?
Bass. Who do I love on bass? Gosh.
I'm partial to O'Teal.
I love O'Teal. I also love that guy from Pigeons Playing Ping Pong.
Oh, yeah?
That guy's a monster.
I have to listen to stuff.
And who else do I just love on bass? Gosh. Who did I hear recently that I was just like, holy cow. Yeah, it's funny. My bass style is really almost like if they could at some points sound like they're playing guitar on their bass, I get super into that.
I hear you, dude. I hear you. What about drums?
Drums? One of my favorite drummers is Billy Martin. Medeski, Martin and Wood.
Oh, yeah.
I think that for me, drums should just always keep perfect time. And then the other, I'm a keyboard guy, I'm a guitar guy, all of that stuff should to me be the forefront, and the drummer should be you should notice how amazing the drummer is, but I don't need them to be the forefront of anything.
I'm totally with you. I get lost a lot of times in drum solos. I'll use that opportunity to go either to the bathroom or grab a beer. To me, Billy Martin probably does that best. Of just he's so fluid, but so tight.
You are the band, but you're also not the band.
I love Medeski, Martin and Wood. What they've done, I just find to be completely masterful.
Are they still a thing?
I mean, I saw them a handful of years ago. I think they're a thing when it's viable and. Because they all have their own side things too. But one of my favorite bands for a long time. It's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us, Todd. We're really grateful.
Good to see your face.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. You're looking great.
Thanks.
When this whole thing's over, let's work together again.
I would love that.
The first song you heard on today's episode was Earl's Bolero by Mike Dillon, and we leave you with another one of his songs titled Bonobo. Thank you for listening to Galaxy Tenants. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts.